The General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, came into force on the 25th of May 2018, formalising the need to value individuals' personal information and embed protection in all processing activities and business practices. Our GDPR overview describes the principles behind GDPR and the implications for schools. This module aims to help school staff understand the practical steps they can take to protect personal data. Humans are the weakest link, with 80% of data protection breaches involving staff. You can be both at risk and a data protection threat to others. It's a question of when and how you deal with it, rather than if. Phishing uses email to fool you into passing over sensitive information, usernames, passwords, etc. Swishing is similar but done through text or instant messaging. Telephone or even paper attacks can persuade victims to open an email or attachment. Phishing and swishing are common, so remember that honest companies won't ask customers for passwords via email. There was a series of incidents like this targeted at schools in 2017, resulting in ransomware attacks. This is where a malicious program that locks a computer and demands payment from the owner to get their data back. You can minimise the risk of cyber attacks by thinking about the messages you receive. Were you expecting the message? Is it actually addressed to you? Does it ask you for personal information to log in somewhere or open something? Does the address it came from look right? Is the spelling, punctuation and language correct? Is there a sense of urgency? Respond now. Why? The rule to remember is if in doubt, don't click, and make sure you tell your colleagues. If, however, you did click, be sure to tell your data protection lead so that they can minimise the risk to you and others. Data protection and cybersecurity overlap, and school processes need to work with both to ensure stakeholders are protected. Good data protection does not exist without good cybersecurity. Strong IT security policies and procedures must be in place and followed by all staff. IT security and data protection policies must be regularly reviewed. Acceptable use agreements should be in place for staff and students and should include the use of internet and email. Staff working remotely should be using home or remote working guidelines, personalised to individual school processes. All schools and anyone working at home should employ the following simple steps. Regularly update your software. Use antivirus software. Use strong passwords, and not always the same one. Use encryption. Avoid using external devices, cloud technology rather than portable pen drives. Don't leave computers unlocked. Risk is most often associated with cyber attacks or mistakes using online communication. Data is, of course, also held on paper, and this is very vulnerable to loss. Personal and sensitive data should not be kept off school premises. If papers containing personal information must be taken off-site, steps should be taken to protect and return it. Some best practice tips. Clearly mark documents with sensitive data as such. Don't print unnecessary copies. Keep a clear desk and don't leave papers lying around. Choose physically secure ways to carry or keep sensitive documents. Avoid taking personal data off-site, and if unavoidable, carry in a lockable bag and don't leave unattended. Schools may consider signing documents in and out. Shred papers, but don't reuse the shreds for packaging. So what happens if mistakes are made? Privacy breaches can lead to limitless financial penalties, damaged reputation, a loss of stakeholder trust, and for employees, the prospect of disciplinary action. It is in all of our interest to handle data appropriately. Data privacy is relevant to and the responsibility of everyone in the organisation. If you suspect there's been a breach or a potential breach, you must report it to your school's data protection lead, DPL. It is vital that schools adopt a culture of openness and willingness to come forward if staff think there may have been a breach. It's It's not uncommon for someone to lose a memory stick or some paperwork. This data from the Information Commissioner's Office details breaches in the UK between January and March 2016. For any potential breach, the risk to the rights and freedoms of the data subjects will need to be assessed and a decision taken as to whether it should be reported to the Information Commissioner's Office. Schools should have a breach response plan in place and a data protection officer who will respond to the situation accordingly. Now let's think about subject access requests. Any member of staff can receive a SAR or subject access request. SARs can be made in person, verbally, or in writing. The data subject, that's the person making the request, doesn't actually have to say it's a SAR. Submission forms can be very useful, but schools can't insist they're used. Schools must be confident of the identity of the data subject, and if not, must seek proof. Schools should ensure that they have some direction as to the scope of the request at the outset. Ask follow-up questions so that you're really clear what the subject is trying to achieve. This will always save time later on, and always keep good records. All staff should be clear as to what their school's SAR response plan is. Schools must make sure that new and temporary staff are as well briefed as the rest of the team. Subject access requests must be completed within a month of the request. This can be extended to 2 months if the request is very complex, but the subject must be informed within the initial month. Fees have been abolished. However, there are exceptions for excessive or vexatious requests. If you're in a maintained school rather than an academy, you need to bear in mind a parent's right to access their child's educational record under the Education Pupil Information England Regulations 2005. These regulations cover any record of information that is processed by or on behalf of the school in relation to pupils. It is natural to be concerned over what you can and can't do at school. The key to any queries of this sort is to remember that the question is not, can we process personal data in this way? It's, have we met the principles of GDPR? Have we assessed the risk? And can we demonstrate compliance? To ascertain if an activity needs full risk assessment, ask yourself these questions. Is this a new project? Does it collect new information? Does it compel individuals to provide you with information? Will information be disclosed to others? Does it involve technology which might be privacy intrusive? Do you need to contact individuals in ways they might find intrusive? Is the type of information likely to raise privacy concerns? Will it result in significant impact on the individuals? Schools must be able to show they have assessed the level of risk involved and make a sound decision as to whether they are able to reduce that risk or whether they're going to tolerate it. This is not a task that can be done once, as schools must show they're keeping things under review. Regular data protection audits are a sound way to do this. So what should your next steps be? Schools, academies and MATs should complete a data asset register. What data do you hold and how is it processed? The legal basis for the data processing. Identify any high-risk areas. Carry out data protection impact assessments on each of those high-risk areas. Consider contracts. Are they GDPR compliant? Develop robust policies and implement in working practice. Develop response plans, both for subject access requests and data breaches. And finally, as individuals, all school staff should embed data protection into everything they do. The Information Commissioner's Office offers a range of free posters and advice to help this happen in your schools. Some reminders before you go. You can be both at risk and a data protection threat to others. Data privacy is the responsibility of everyone in the organisation. Policies involve all staff. Be sure to find, read and live yours. Think about your own computer and paper usage in and out of school. Ensure you are familiar with your SAR and breach response plans. Ensure you assess the risk and consequences of the way you use data on a rolling basis. We hope this has given you some actionable, practical advice on how to respond to GDPR in your school. If you have any feedback, good and bad, we'd really appreciate you getting in touch. Our thanks and best wishes from the team.